The song by Beyonce, Run the World Girls, talks about the women making the history go round. There are also how behind a man there is always a strong woman, such as Hillary Clinton or Nancy Reagan. This also happens to be the ancient world, long before the modern day era, finding women power. In ancient Egypt, these women were equals, and even some ruled as pharaohs, such as Queen Hatshepsut. We have always learned something new, especially for the time in quarantine that we have. And also, it can be an eye-opener for some people about ancient society. I have studied about Queen Hatshepsut for the last 5 years or more. She was an excellent person with interesting beginnings, success as queen and pharaoh, and lastly with a death that is very suspicious. The time Hatshepsut started was even before she was born. It started around the time the dynasty started and what her life was before being queen. She was a part of the 18th dynasty, which was in this time when Egypt was incredibly wealthy and peaceful. The dynasty started with history of incest and the previous dynasty with the second king having genetic sterilization for the next male. This leads to bring in a non-royal to marry the sister of the sterile king. The non-royal brought into the family was Thutmose I, the father of Queen Hatshepsut, and likely the general or a distant relative of the king. Amenhotep I. Thutmose married Amis, who was probably related to the previous king, the daughter of Amis Nefertari, who is the link of the 17th and 18th dynasty, which just so happened to be Hatshepsut's grandmother. She was a priestess of Amun before she became queen. She had also helped her father with the kingdom and groomed her to be the heir that would help his son. When her father dies, Hatshepsut goes from being the daughter of the king to the great royal wife of the king or queen. In order to do this, she must marry her half-brother Thutmose II in order to keep the bloodline pure. This allows her and her brother to conceive the son that would continue the dynasty. She was said to be the power behind the throne, as Thutmose II was a weak ruler and sickly. She was the god's wife of Amun, which helped the universe not fall apart and please the gods, as he was the king of the gods. Thutmose II wasn't the first pick for becoming the heir to the throne because he was unhealthy and sickly, which explains the lack of accomplishments, which allows Hatshepsut to gain so much power after his death. When her husband dies and her stepson/nephew, Thutmose III, too young to rule alone without Hatshepsut, she becomes the queen regent for the young king and runs the country. But after a while, she becomes Pharaoh Ma-Kara, a man the people would respect her more. Sound familiar? She had to change her dress for people and take her seriously to make herself look more like a man. Her accomplishments include opening up a prestigious trading route for the Egyptians to trade, and she even traveled to Punt, which had 2 centuries of conflict with Egypt. Her accomplishments and in her temples, especially Del Bahari, she had traveled the Nile River and fought off invasions, which is seen on the scenery art in her temple. She was a capable ruler for the Egyptian people, though, with economic and military endeavors. Her death was the most shocking part of her whole story, and even what happened to her after death in her image. In her death, her stepson defaced all of her images, minus the building that she had built in Thebes and modern-day Luxor. It is said that he had defaced her at the end of his reign to the funerary temple, which was built for her in western Thebes, or Del Bahari, where it was defaced. The reason behind it is that Thutmose III had a young son, Amenhotep II, who was too young to rule, so he did not want to give any royal women any ideas on taking the throne from him, like his aunt had done to him. Her death had been talked about ever since her identity was discovered in Egyptology. After her burial had happened, her mummy had been moved around several times along with her family's mummies, which includes her nanny and her father. There had been some speculation on how she died. There had been speculation that her stepson had murdered her. But as soon as they found the mummy, along with lots of investigations, she had died from old age, mouth cancer, and was diabetic, which disputed the fact that she was murdered. Queen Hatshepsut, she was an excellent person with interesting beginnings, success as queen and pharaoh, and lastly, with a death that is very suspicious. Egyptologist Kara Cooney said, "The track record of men taking credit for female successes is unbearably long. It seems to be the time, in Beyonce's words, women help rule the world."